making this PowerPoint a year ago. And then I got to a point where it was rather overwhelming. Hi, Katie. You can sit up here on the couch if you want. And I apologize if you get a little fruit fly buzzing around you. That's what happens when you bring your garden stuff in. And I just, kill them. So anyway, but I started this, and then I got frustrated because it's so detailed, and I don't know how many pages the book is. It's like close to 400 pages, and so I put it away, and I just thought, well, maybe I'll just teach up to, there's 25 fallacies, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just teach up to the fallacies. And then a few months ago, I got my second wind, and I went back and I looked through the book, and I thought, okay, find the stuff that works for today, that we need for today. And kind of like, I kind of went with this new energy. We know the Book of Mormon is a book for our time. And The Naked Communist is also a book for our time. And I prayed about this, and I thought, after I do this, I got the Great Conflict from Pam Openshaw. I've got a part A and a part B that I'm going to teach come January and February. And then I thought, well, we're so close to the second coming. Do we need all this? And Heavenly Father said, yes. Keep going. And I'm like, okay. So I got to get creative, and I've already got 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 5 PowerPoints. 5 or 6. So I'm like, okay, Heavenly Father, because this is stuff that's not just for the last days. It will actually move into the millennial reign. And so I thought, okay, we need to know this stuff. God told me we need to know this stuff, and stop questioning.
So don't you think we'll have a millennial constitution?
Absolutely.
Yes. From the lawgiver?
Absolutely.
It spans all of history.
Well, that DNC 109 that we're supposed to read, the president, talks about Zion and the Constitution. Besides the temple dedication, there's so much yumminess that we need to revisit before conference again. In
Yes.
DNC 109.
Yeah. And I actually have been studying parts of it, and it's really good.
There's a group online that just broke it down by the day and said, this day we're studying this many.
LDS Living does it.
Yeah, LDS Living is doing it.
So my
that's
Stake
cool.
Book of Mormon class yesterday, I have a really good flyer if you want it, that we studied DNC 109.
Yes.
On,
Cool.
yeah, I'll send
Yeah,
you a
send it
flyer.
to me and
she
I'll
has
send it
lots
out.
of she's my deep one, Sally Poet, that does all the deep
Oh,
dives.
yeah.
Yes, I would love that.
All right,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
I would love hands raised, questions, comments. I would love that. So if I just read it straight through, we don't do anything. It's I timed it's 1 hour and 20 minutes. But I do have a surprise at the end. So
Donuts.
no, even better. I'm going to sing for you. So, all right. So the first line of the book, the Homo Marxian, Karl Marx. It is a terrible and an awesome thing when a man sets out to create all other men in his own image. To achieve his goal, Marx required 2 things. First, total annihilation of opposition, the downfall of all existing governments and economies and all societies. I shall stride through the wreckage a creator. Second, a regimented breed of Pavlovian men whose minds could be triggered into immediate action by signals from their masters.
Wait, say right there.
Yep. And that's exactly, that paragraph alone says...
Can you go back one so I can get the words?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm trying to get the words, yeah.
You have to go back to.
Oh, we'll have to take 2 pictures.
2 pictures. Sorry, I got creative. So the reason why I have this is because I had it done, and then I went back and I said, okay, I got to add this, I got to add that. And so rather than completely destroy the slide and start over, I put them in front. So,
Where's the other one?
There it is.
okay. A regimented breed of Pavlovian men whose minds could be triggered into immediate action by signals from their masters. And so we go, so my brother-in-law is a Democrat, die-hard Democrat. He just turned 80 this year. And he's FDR, he was the savior, you know, one of those Democrats. And all his children are Republicans. And they just cannot, even his wife's a Republican. And they cannot understand why his brain is wired for Democrat. They said, Dad, Democrats love abortion. Yeah, everybody always says that. I'm like, yeah, because it's like, you know, killing
It's
babies.
murder.
It's, yeah. And you cannot get through his head, yes, but the Democrat Party is good. And it's the Pavlovian. When your mind is trained there, it's almost like you can't untrain it.
It would be really hard for me to switch from a Republican to a Democrat at this point.
Exactly.
I mean, you couldn't convince me that what they have
No.
is good.
Yeah.
So I can see how you can become.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, Homo Marxian is frightening and puzzling to the rest of humanity because a criminally conditioned mind does not respond to the way normal people expect. The Marxist man has reduced his thinking to the lowest of values. Homo Marxian considers himself the dust of the earth. He pretends to no other role. He pretends to no other role. He denies himself the possibility of a soul and repudiates his capacity for immortality. The Marxist man makes no secret. His objective is to rule the world.
Okay, will you go back one? Sorry.
Yep, not a problem. Easy. It's so
Thank you,
easy
thank
to
you.
do it on your phone. Much easier than a computer. So, all right. Karl Marx was a political fugitive driven from Germany, France, and Belgium. He lived in one of the worst dirty neighborhoods in London. He occupied 2 rooms with most everything broken and tattered and filthy. This did not embarrass Marx and his wife at all. Marx was called a genius of the age. Then the next moment he'd be called violent, then quarrelsome, a dictator, a swashbuckler, contentious, and a turbulent personality. That's very interesting that someone could be all those things and not for the good.
That sounds like the Democrats today
Yeah.
are far
Absolutely.
left.
The early years of Karl Marx. So Karl Marx came from a long line of outstanding scholars. Karl was a quick and bright scholar, and so I'm putting these things on there. They're not in the verbiage, but that's the family home. He went to the Bonn University. He scandalized his parents by joining a tavern club, running himself deeply in debt, and almost getting himself expelled for nocturnal drunkenness and rioting. Quite a redeeming fellow, isn't he? When his father died, he came out in the open to become a philosopher, and his doctoral dissertation, The Difference Between Natural Philosophy of Democritus and Epicurus, and he favored Epicurus, doing away from a
You
creator.
know what Epicureanism is?
No, I don't. Thank you.
It's
Tell me.
where live and like eat, drink, and be merry.
Okay.
The epitome
That
of-
makes perfect sense because he was a
So
drunken.
Doesn't it have to do with food?
Yeah, that's
Like
what I thought was food
Epicurean.
too.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. You know what? I didn't look it up. So thank you. That explains so much, doesn't it? Okay.
Antichrist. Eat, drink, and be merry.
The
He'll be fine.
anti-religious sentiments of Marx found further expression in his thesis when he chose for his model, in one word, I hate all the gods. His desire was to repudiate all forms of religion.
Can you go back from the I hate? Yeah, real quick. Okay. All right, now go.
That's okay. I can actually just send you the whole PowerPoint.
Yeah, do that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
So
you don't
would
have to
not
worry.
include himself?
Oh, you know what though? Unless you have PowerPoint, it'll cover the words.
Oh, okay.
So you have to, and here's the thing, every computer has PowerPoint. So when you open it up, it should open in PowerPoint, and then all you have to do is go in and do the,
Scroll through to get what you want.
no, but you hit,
Push button?
yeah, but the mode, anyway, I'll think about it. All right, so and he wanted to win the hand of the daughter, Baron von Westphalen. And for 7 years, he corresponded with Jenny. He said if she married him, he would become the wife of a revolutionary man. They were married in June 1843, and over the years he studied but rarely worked. It bored him. His family nearly starved to death, and he was always pawning items. Not a redeeming man at all. And yet, it's so interesting how he attracts certain people. I guess you can attract anybody in any mode of life.
In the end, doesn't his wife commit suicide, his children commit suicide? They're all, yeah, they do.
Probably.
Well,
He's
you know,
just such a
but going back
depressed.
to I hate all gods, except for he made an exception for himself.
Yes,
but
because
what does
he
that say?
considered himself a
He
god.
has self-hate, and he's covering it up
Yeah,
because he doesn't have inner power.
Yeah.
So he has to borrow and take from everybody else. He's like a black hole person.
isn't that beautifully said? Absolutely. So Friedrich Engels. In many ways, Engels was the very opposite of Karl Marx. He was tall, slender, vivacious, and good-natured. For the son of a bourgeois businessman, he had a limited education. What he lacked in formal training, he made up through hard work and native talent. And in 1844, he traveled to Paris to meet Marx. The attraction was instantaneous. After 10 days, both men felt their destiny was to work together. They would become militant revolutionists together. Again, law of attraction, right? The partnership between Marx and Engels gave them courage immediately to launch an international communist league. So it was actually a group, and it was and they called it the International. And it was based on the need for a violent revolution. And in 1847, the two attended the Federation of the Just and basically took over and were asked to write a manifesto to the world, to write a passionate plea for revolution. International communism, the ruling class, trembling, and the proletariats freed from their chains, where working men unite.
Working men enslaved.
Isn't it interesting? It's always a fist.
And look at the roots.
Last night we had
Yes.
she wants to, I'll get her to come, she's in Cedar Hills, but she's an immigrant from Cuba, and she came here legally, she has a 5-month-old, and she speaks out about communism, and she'll find communist groups, and she'll show up, and then she testifies of how poor the country is, and how women are selling themselves so they can feed their children, and just all the atrocities of it that Kimberly Fletcher heard her last night, and she's like, oh, I'll fly you out October 14th, and J.D. Vance is going to be speaking and have you speak to tell what true communism is coming from Cuba. And she wants to come to meetings.
And what she said is
Yeah.
very powerful.
So
What she was
powerful.
explaining
Beautiful
it,
young
like,
woman.
wow. Yeah.
It's shocking,
Very cool.
the detail that she, just
Well,
came
we'll
from.
have to get her on the schedule for next year.
Yes, let's do.
Okay, the Revolution of 1848. The ink had barely dried when France's proletariat went to war against the bourgeois. So the bourgeois is the rich people, and the proletariat is the poor people. And so this is the thing of Marx, is he had in his mind that the proletariat was so downtrodden, and it was always the rich people that were suppressing them. And as I studied this, I saw that it was, the reason why he thought that is because of himself. He was projecting. So Marx was giddy because full communism landed. Then another revolution broke out in Germany. And the revolutionary leaders soon discovered Marx was a propaganda liability. He was insufferable, arrogant, and he was rejected from Germany. And upon return to France, his communism influence dried up and died. The family of Karl Marx. The family lived in dire poverty. Engels would send £5 occasionally, and Karl spent most of it on his time in the library. The London police took most everything they owned to pay debts. And Karl went to Holland to get money from an uncle he received, £160. And then he traveled to Germany to see his mother. Then he went out with his drinking buddies and spent almost every penny received. Somehow his wife stood by his side despite his antics. Just amazing. The founding of the First International. So London, 1862, Ekateria, Poland and Holland to unionize. So I found these different documents. It was really cool. The movement began to catch on, and he had a hard time not pushing hard and admitted to Engels he was compromised. But he did not want peace. What does that sound like right now that we're experiencing today? You know, I watched the debate and how Tim Walz was saying about January 6th, and I loved what JD said. You mean to tell me that these people who burned down cities and killed people and destroyed whole communities, and there's nothing to be said on that, but you're using January 6th, which in my opinion was a CIA setup. So it's disgusting.
No guns.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Exactly.
Burning. No.
Yep. He did not want peace, and this is what communism and then socialism is. They don't want peace. As his feelings surfaced, it created violent suspicion, distrust to the organization, and in 1873, the association for all practical purposes was dead. The trust was gone. Marx writes a book to change the world. Marx wanted to make the international work, then desired to write a book on his theories to change the world. The title was The Capital. But as he wrote, his health became severe and he was covered with boils. Engels helped with getting the book published. After several years, it didn't create the results they were hoping for. Little did they know this was not the generation to make capital the principal attack, the principle to attack the existing order of things. Okay, the appeal of communism. Communism appeals to certain educated people because it includes philosophy of nature, law of opposites, law of transformation, and law of negation. Communism serves two needs: universal peace and universal prosperity. So the communist philosophy maintains that science is the knowing of all truth. One reality, matter. Matter is conclusively the beginning and the end of all reality. What is the origin of energy? Galaxies, animals, and the origin of man. So Marx and Engels answered all these questions with three laws of matter. Everything in existence is a combination of opposites. Electricity, it's a negative and a positive charge. This is his belief now. The atom consists of protons and electrons, and the organic body has qualities of attraction and repulsion, and are a unity of selfishness and altruism. Contradiction is the root of all life. It's all about me.
Well,
It's
there's
all
a little
about
bit
me.
of truth to that. in
Yes.
That we live in a world of opposition. There is opposition in all things.
And see, this is what you can see is how
The whole
Satan
truth.
does the counterfeit. So I want you to recognize this word conflict. So this introduces communist dialectics. Remember that word, dialectics, and what it means is communist conflict. And this is what Marx just masterfully tries to use to turn and convert the dialectics, conflict.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah. The law of negation. So each entity tends to negate itself in order to reproduce itself in greater quantity. In the case of a barley seed, it germinates out of its own death. Or negation produces a plant. Thus, nature is constantly expanding through dying.
We call it, resurrection, like, right?
Yeah. Well, this is how they twist it.
Yeah.
The law of transformation. This law states a continuous quantitative development. It results in a leap in nature and a new form or entity is produced. So you take methane and you add a proton and it turns into propane, ethane. Then you take propane and they change just like one atom and it becomes butane and pentane. And just by adding an atom of hydrogen or carbon, it changes it. Well, of course it does. But how he twists things is, yes, but that little thing changes the whole, it's just really kind of sick and bizarre. We know that that's the nature of God, that an atom can change things, but he uses it to make it the primary thing. Matter is primary. Mind is secondary. Okay?
So they look at us as protoplasm to be managed.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no soul, there's no spirit, we're just protoplasm. That's why the genocides can happen.
Yeah.
It's like what
It's just matter that goes back in.
Ferrari was saying.
And that's why they can do the Ukraine war and kill people, because
Yeah.
they don't care about life. There's no,
Just
there's
matter.
no soul.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. Therefore, there can be no soul. Thank you, Nancy. You had it. Next word that came up. So, no immortality and no God. Marx was asked what objectives in life was. He said to dethrone God and destroy capitalism.
I thought he said there was no God.
Exactly.
And they-
So why does he have to destroy it if there is no God?
Or horror, yep.
Yeah,
Into
exactly.
people's minds.
He turned worship to himself because man is the epitome of perfection among nature's achievements. Therefore, it is the center of the universe. Okay, a brief critique of the communist philosophy of nature. A newly converted communist acquires a feeling of omniscience. In this state of mind, the student will often drop his attitude of critical inquiry. This is why you see Common Core take out critical thinking. This is all part of the
Yet
Marx.
they say it's critical thinking.
Yeah,
They have to always say the
It's
opposite of
control.
what it really is.
It's
But
mind
in
control.
this state of mind, the student will drop the attitude of critical inquiry. So now we've got to
Just
go
do
with
what we
our
say.
feelings. Everything's about our feelings. We've got to drop that horrible critical learning. You know, you just
Subjective,
it's all about the heart.
Common sense.
Yes, he will invite indoctrination in heavy doses because at last has discovered that truth in its ultimate form. The great tragedy of communism was the founders did not stop at the so-called dialectic materialism. They wanted to abolish eternal truth. What did I say dialectic was?
Conflict.
Conflict. Communist interpretation of history. Self-preservation is the supreme instinct in man. His whole pattern of human conduct, being governed by the rest of life from nature, in its dialectic process, man against nature. This led them to the conclusion all historical developments are the result of economic determination. Man's effort to survive. In one word, man's consciousness changes with every condition of material existence.
Self-preservation is the ego, which is the natural man, which is what we're supposed to kill.
Yeah. So you can see how Satan has twisted this to condition the brain away from all our eternal truths, our light, his glory, by making it all about me, me, me. Okay, communism has no idea of freedom as the possibility of choice. Turning right or left, but giving full play to one's energy, giving vast quantities of energy in building a superstructure of government. By force, mankind could be highly perfected and produce a highly perfected society. Reversing the Judeo-Christian approach, which endeavors to improve humanity and to improve society. Human beings are not the creators of society, but its products. Isn't that something? Yeah. But the thing of it is don't you see it in little bits and pieces? It's like Satan has been using the United States for the last 120 years, just little here, a little there. It's that old philosophy of how to cook a frog. Mm-hmm. And you just don't do it all. You throw it all at once and you jump away from it, but you just nibble at it and you nibble at it and you just put those, change the dialogue, change the language, and before you know it,
And now we're boiling and there's no way out.
there's no way out. We are weak, and very few can get out of that boiling pot, if
And
at
I
all.
think we can get out by what Colette's doing is the mamas in one generation and the grandmas can teach correct principles,
Yes.
and then we can get out. So it's on us.
And
right?
it's identifying and seeing the problem, and this is why we're doing this, is so you can see it and go, ooh, no, that's not the right thing.
Well,
So-
they become master exploiters of weakness, and everyone has fractured parts in our family histories. But instead of healing that and becoming whole, wholesome, holy, they want to exploit the fracture within a person, which so causes dissonance and
Yes.
cognitive dissonance, and they can't have their mind and heart unified in a witness of what the whole truth is.
Absolutely.
And then become whole and holy. So they exploit people.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if we can do that wholeness with our families, that's why President Nelson said we need women who are educated and prepared in the sin sick world, or
Exactly.
the world will never recover. So these little meetings like this are so important for us, and then to teach our
Absolutely.
children
Yep.
and our grandchildren.
Yep. So hopefully they heard that. But human progress explained, terms of class struggle. This is what Marx and Engels became really masterfully. They decided two basic classes of people: those who earned the means of production, thereby became the exploiters, and those who owned nothing, therefore had to sell or trade their physical labor to survive. And look how they took, this is what they're doing against Donald Trump, is because he has means, he is the exploiter, and therefore he has to be stopped. Because his capitalism is going to hurt the poor person that has to work. Well, I'm sorry, but since when did we come here on this earth to have free labor?
No.
To have free everything, and we don't have to work?
They're trying to change the history with Egypt too, of Joseph who was sold into Egypt. They're like, he was the slave holder. That's what, when I was there, the Muslim woman said, he was the one that had the slaves. No, he had the food, and they traded for food to work, which is being paid for
Right.
labor. It's not they were slaves. They worked for food, like we work for food. And for
Exactly. Yeah. So Freeman, whoops, wrong way. So we got the class struggle. So freeman and slave, patrician and plebeian, guildmaster and journeyman, lord and serf, in a word, oppressor and oppressed. And this is their philosophy, is there's no, you've got to give people things. You've got to give them things because they deserve it. Because they've been so suppressed. It's
So
just,
that's what they're doing with critical race theory
Exactly.
and SEL and all of that in the schools. And
Yes.
so this little booklet, you can look and read all about the oppressor and oppressed with SEL and CRT.
it's crazy. Class warfare. All right, the communist theory on private property. Engels said private property is the root of all evil. Those who own land and means of production obviously reap the major profit. This would place them in a position to hire other men to do their work, dictate wages, hours and conditions, thereby ensuring their own freedom and social status while exploiting the toiling class. Just, it's crazy.
Instead of they're providing jobs.
Yes, and giving people families and houses and transportation. Private property creates greed and pride and selfishness, imperialism, and war. It eliminates private property to save class structure.
Which is controlling you.
Because somebody owns it.
Yeah,
So
the world
what about
economic.
them?
You
Isn't it
own nothing
delusional?
and be happy.
It's so delusional. But see, we have brains that work, we live it, and we understand it. There are people who do not understand this.
Well, most in our church don't even understand the Abrahamic covenant of what land was given as a gift from God the Creator for families, posterity, then prosperity and security. Those are the four main ones for the Abrahamic covenant. So, I mean, to directly conflict with that is going against the very heavens.
Well, think of Jamestown 400 years ago. When they landed, they did what they called Christian communism. And they almost all died because nobody would work. Everybody just wanted stuff, but nobody would work. So I think it was Bradford. Was it William Bradford?
His ancestor, Mike's.
Oh wow. He said, okay, we're going to stop this communism, Christian communism, and gave everybody a piece of land. And then you work your land, and then you can barter and trade, or you can sell or whatnot. And guess what? They prospered. Living proof
So
that
case in point also in Russia during all those decades of communism, most all of the produce came from 80% of all of their food and produce came from private back gardens. And so that tells you all economies are local, all politics are local. If we can have something local, that's really because we don't even have this discussion a lot of times, even in the restored gospel, is that faith works both ways. It works in darkness, it works in the light. And whatever we put our faith on.
Relief Society President Julie.
But the thing is, God works through faith because that incentive to, like our chickens, like to produce, that there's a self-evident reward and something that is intrinsically there.
yes.
And putting faith in that process is a godly thing. So it's
Absolutely.
not just self-interest and the greed of having land and we become greedy. Yes, there are those people that do that, but it works because self-interest is to bless others, like a father with a family.
Yes.
Mother giving
Yes.
and providing physically and spiritually in balance. You know, that's our hope.
It sure is. So let's talk about the communist theory of religion. Marx and Engels believed private property was the root of religion, and it was seized upon a device to put down the rebellion of the exploited class. They said religion was made to serve as an opiate for the oppressed.
So crazy.
Isn't this insane?
Pope?
The workers were told, judge not, but to remain passive and dutiful to their masters. Religion is the sigh of a heartless world, and it is the opium of the people.
Pretty smug.
I'm addicted.
Isn't it sick? It's just sick.
The sick man.
Yes, very sick man. The communist theory of morals. Marx said the clergy, the landlord and bourgeois claim to speak in the name of God in order to protect their own interests as exploiters. We deny all morality taken from superhuman non-class concepts. This is a deception, a swindle, a befogging of the mind of the workers and peasants, of the landlords and capitalists. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet are dominant classes trying to impose respect for property of the exploited masses. The ends justify the means.
Yes, that's what they do.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And you think about what we see today with what's going on, how dominant the ends justify the means in what they're saying
And
and
so
doing.
that does the 28 principle number 7 says the proper role of government is to protect equal rights, not provide equal things. So
Yes.
you have to have property.
Absolutely.
Let's get real for a sec. There's truth in what they are becoming that, because look at all the land being bought up by Chinese, Bill Gates, and they are becoming exactly what they say they hate, but they really are the example. They're projecting onto
Exactly.
everybody else, but
Projecting
yet
and
they're the
gaslighting.
ones that do exactly this.
Exactly. It's a two-faced, do as I say, not as I do.
Yep.
And that again comes
So
down,
let us buy up all the land and then we'll take care of you.
Because
Yes,
they
you
have
don't need
no
to.
morals.
and then we'll be the overlords, and you can be our serfs.
Exactly what we told you you were.
Exactly. So the communist plan of action. Products no longer come from private workshop, but the factory where the united efforts of many produce the commodity. Workers should receive what the commodity is worth. Isn't that interesting? Management is only clerical in nature. Thus, the working class should rise up and seize the factories and operate them as their own.
See, they want war.
All wealth is created by worker. Capital creates nothing. The rich exploits the poor, and they get poorer. Isn't that an interesting concept? It's ridiculous. I thought that was hysterical when I saw that picture. I have to put that in there. It's so cute. This is what BlackRock and these companies, these large companies, the Bill Gates and them, this is exactly what they have come to. And they are acting exactly what we just said, is they are the overlords. The dictatorship of the proletariat. So revolution was inevitable. Marx and Engels decided to hasten and felt it could be done in 3 steps. And the first was wiping out the old order with revolutionary terror. Second, set up a dictatorship of the proletariat. And under that, there are 4 things. Completely suppress the old capitalist class. What's that?
Which is we the people.
It is, and it's your employers. It's people who get this idea, I want to build something, or I want to,
How dare you?
yeah. And so they
Entrepreneurs.
have this wonderful idea. They're entrepreneurs. They start a company. They employ people. They pay them. Now, some employers are not perfect, but a lot of them are really good and treat their people right.
So
So
you have
number
the
two,
freedom to leave that company if they're not good, and
exactly, go work
for that
somewhere
company.
else. So 2, create a mighty army of defense to be used for the consolidation of the ties with the proletarians of other lands and for development and the victory of the revolution in all countries. That's so crazy. It's just crazy. And then 3, consolidate the unity of the masses in support of the dictatorship. And 4, establish universal socialism by eliminating private property and preparing of all mankind for the ultimate adoption of full communism. And then 3rd, The final step is the transition from socialism to full communism. This is what they're trying to do now.
Yeah.
Okay? Lenin visualized a world without courts, lawyers, judges, rulers, and elected representatives, or even policemen. What does that sound like?
Kamala.
Then the door would be open for transition from the first phase of higher communism. This is exactly what we're living right now. This is so important for us to see because people around us who are not awake, they don't see it as a negative. But if we enlighten them and say, look what this is full communism. I know it is because I learned about Marx and Engels and what their plan was. See, if we know it, we can say it. Sometimes we sit back and go, I know that's wrong, but I don't know what to say. So this is why we're learning, so that we can have a voice.
And the patterns just repeat themselves.
Yeah. The classless, stateless society under communism. Each will produce according to his ability, and each will receive according to his need. Marx and Engels presumed the output of production would be tremendous. They could dispense with markets, money, and prices. Commodities would be stockpiled at central places, and those who worked would be entitled to help themselves on the basis of their needs. Lenin wanted the proletariats to be an armed people so that they would never abuse their power as the capitalists. I find that kind of sick, you know? There they are, ready to go with their guns in hand. That is...
They want to start sparks of war. That's what it is.
That's exactly it. Marx wanted no peace.
Isn't it interesting that in the Doctrine and Covenants and the efforts to live the united order in the early church, that the scripture says according to their needs and wants. Like, I don't want a boat, but I want a violin.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is that the Lord, people think that the gospel treats everyone like a bunch of sheep and, you know, everybody's the same, but that's just so opposite of what's true, is that the individual is a whole world of possibilities, infinite possibilities, worlds without end in one person to create life and propagate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Byproducts of the Industrial Revolution. Marx and Engels were born in the midst of the Industrial Revolution, which contributed to disease, violence, slums, and vices. This resulted in the ideology of communism for them. The pounding, pumping, inanimate monsters would eventually liberate mankind from the slavery of bare substance. They viewed this as inhuman treatment of men and women and children. It displaced people from their homes and made them serve industry.
They made jobs.
Exactly. It's just like,
Would you rather have today where the machines do it and we have no jobs and we can't feed our family?
yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? The communist interpretation of history. So, these, remember what I'm going to go through now. These are their fallacy, okay? So what I'm teaching you is not what's happening, it's their fallacy. So Marx and Engels tried to change history on the basis of a single criterion, which was economics. Of course, this played a part in history, but so has climate, topography, access to oceans and inlet and inland waterways, and mechanical inventions, and scientific discoveries, national and racial affinities, filial affection, religion, sentiments of loyalty, and patriotism, and many more. Okay. Fallacy 2. The human mind is incapable of moral free will in the sense that it will make a choice in directing the course of history. Read that again. The human mind is incapable of moral free will
That's why we're here.
in the sense that it makes a choice in directing the course of history. They believe that material circumstances force the human mind to move in a certain direction and that man does not have the free will to resist it.
But isn't he trying to force it on everybody else?
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's that twist, do as I say, not as I do. And the refusal to recognize that man's moral agency and the power to make a choice is fatal to Marxism. We gotta shut him up. And isn't that, what did we see happen this last 4 years? Well, it's been longer. It's really been since Obama with Twitter and Facebook.
I'm still banned since 2014. I still cannot put anything up.
That they have to shut down all of the voices on social media of conservatives. They can't have that. It's fatal to Marxism. It's communism. The communist explanation of society, fallacy number 3. As men, are men free to choose this form of society for themselves? By no means. Assume a particular state of development in the productive forces of man and will get a particular form of commerce and consumption. Could Marx and Engels allow wishful thinking to completely obscure the facts of history? That they would have convinced themselves that when a certain society of production exists, a certain type of society must exist also. There is no facts that this is so.